All right, welcome to this lesson. Today's lesson, I want to talk to you real quick on something simple but important. We talked about how to name your website, name your company. Now I want to talk about how to get a domain name. Simple. You might already know this. If so, you can kind of skip through this and just answer the questions below and move on. But I'll give you a few little tricks, what I think about domain names. So listen to this because it can be relatively important, probably stuff you haven't completely heard. So make sure you watch the video on how to name the business, and that's separate. I'm not going to talk about that. But once you picked a name, let's say your name is going to be, Lightspeed Marketing or something like that, or it's going to be culinary restaurant automatedmarketing.com. You're going to focus on restaurants, and you're going to tell them your angle, your brand stories. You're going to automate their marketing for them. So it's called restaurantautomatedmarketing.com. Now, simple thing, you got to buy that domain name and you have to check that it's available. There's actually lots of websites you can use, and they're relatively similar. I'll tell you the ones that I have used, 2 different ones. I don't get paid anything to promote these companies, so don't worry. I've never received a penny from them as an affiliate or anything. It's not important to me. So GoDaddy is one of them. You've probably heard of GoDaddy, but now I use one called Namecheap. I'm not exactly sure why I use Namecheap. Some hacker friends of mine said they liked Namecheap. Honestly, it's probably not that much different. Most of these top tier services are pretty similar, but I've been using Namecheap.com. So you'll just enter in Namecheap.com, go to their website, and then they have a simple search, same with GoDaddy. Type in the name you're thinking. Now here's a general principle. Right now in the modern world, short one-word names are almost all taken, okay? Anything that remotely makes sense. So if you want one word like, Zoom.com or something, well, it's probably taken. So if you want a one-word domain, you're going to have to use a domain broker to negotiate to buy that from somebody. I don't recommend you do that. A lot of people, when they start out business, they make the mistake of spending, $1,000 to $10,000 on a premium domain name. And a guy once told me when I was first starting out, he said, Ty, every domain for every $1 million business I've ever built, I bought for $10. So he meant just be more creative with the names and you're usually good. So go to Namecheap or GoDaddy.com. I would not enter in a one-word name. If you're thinking a one-word name, add another word to it. Even then, oftentimes 2-word domains. So like automatedmarketing.com. That's going to probably be taken, and you have to do the same thing. Try to find the owner. It's a little bit of a pain. Even if you're using a domain broker, a lot of times they don't respond. A lot of times they want ridiculous amounts of money. A little side note, if you do decide to buy the domain, what I often do is first of all, negotiate a lot, but not too much. If you negotiate too much, they just won't email you back. So if the website says this domain's for sale and it's like $5,000, if you offer them like $200, save your time. They're not going to do that. But what I usually do, negotiate a little bit. So I'll usually try to negotiate about 20% off. That's what I found is realistic for most domains. So if it's a $5,000 domain, I offer them $4,000. I can usually get them down to about $4,000. Then if you're cash strapped, a lot of times you can pay them over time. So you could pay them, $1,000 a month for 4 months. There's escrow services to help you do this. GoDaddy has a good one so that you can send them the money and they can't run away with the money. And it automatically, once you pay the amount, it releases the domain name. And if you don't make your payments, they get the domain name back. So that's called an escrow brokering service. And GoDaddy's a great one if you want to do that. It's pretty reliable. I've done it a few times. In general, as I said, not my favorite approach to starting. If this is your first business, don't buy a domain. No matter how awesome it seems, domains are less important than you think. I know a guy who has like a 7-word domain name who made 40 million bucks with his website. So, it's like dong, 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 dong. It's not that important, and here's why. Most people, the way they get to a website now is they Google it. So if it's a long word, and you're worried that, they won't remember all the words, well, they're probably going to just type in something similar. And if you show up at the top of Google, they'll find you by just clicking. Okay? or they're going to find you by you sending them an email and them clicking. So usually the domain name length is relatively unimportant. All in all, it is better to have a shorter domain name if you can, okay? Remember, a fallback for names, you can always use your name. You know, I'm TyLopez.com. You could be, you know, Jenny Smith or BobJones.com. Again, a lot of those 2 words might be taken, but if you have an exotic name like Ty Lopez, mine was available. Okay, the next thing you need to know about domain names, be careful of domain names that when you type them together have 2 letters together in 2 different words. So like, if your company, you want to call it is like Apple, let's see, Enterprises, Apple Enterprises, just making up something random. The Apple and the E at the end of Apple and the Enterprises first word E gets confusing when people type it in. So again, a lot of people don't type in domain names, but some do, and you don't want it crazy. So you want very distinct words, even if they're, so that when they're together, people know that they're different. Like if you wanted to call it restaurantmarketing.com, that's easy. 2 simple words. When they're put together, the T in the restaurant and the M in marketing, they are different letters, and people are going to be able to type that in. So you want the letters of the words that touch each other to be different, ideally, and you also want them to be relatively simple words that can't be misspelled, that don't have a lot of secret spellings or so. I wouldn't want to use something like onomatopoeiamarketing.com. First of all, it's long as heck. Second of all, nobody knows how to type onomatopoeia. And so many people pick domain names that are just, or ambiguous names that could go, that if I said them to you and you heard it, you could understand it spelled 2 different ways, like deer marketing. You wouldn't want that, because if you tell somebody, go check me out at Deer Marketing, well, is it deer like the animal, or is it deer like what you call your wife? D-E-A-R or D-E-E-R? So I'm very careful. And when you're advising your customers, sometimes you're going to build new websites for them. This lesson is going to help you not only build your own, do domain names for yourself, but it also, you can give them advice. Some businesses you go into, one of the things you're going to tell them in their social media and internet marketing of free evaluation is you're going to give them whether the domain name is good, or sometimes you can change it. Sometimes a lot of businesses don't even have the domain name of their own company. I've seen that before, where the company is Joe's Pizza and the website is like Pizza Incorporated or something like that. You really don't want that. The general rule of domains is you want it to be relatively simple. Doesn't have to be super short, but simple in simple words, simple to spell, simple to understand when you verbally say them to somebody, simple to remember, okay? So you go to Namecheap, assuming you're following all these rules. Some of this I talked about in the naming video and naming your company, and some we're talking about now. You type it in, hopefully it says available, and usually there's $7 to $10. Now, people ask me, if the .com isn't available, can I just use the .net, the .org, the .co, the .me, the .mobi, the .biz, the .us, the .info? The answer is no. 99 out of 100 times, that's my advice. There could be the rare, you know, there's some big websites now like, Twitch.tv, and so there are people getting away with not having the .com, but it's just not worth it 99 out of 100 times. So if you're typing something in and it doesn't have the .com, but it has the other the other secondary type of domains available, I would keep searching for a different name or change the 3rd word in the domain. So if it's like, you know, restaurant marketing automation, and that's available and not available, reverse it, restaurant automated marketing or something like that. Usually with a little bit of creativity, a little bit of time on a computer typing in domain names, you'll find something. One thing that's cool to do, when you go to GoDaddy or Namecheap, you'll see a little link on the home page where you type in the domain you're searching for. It'll say bulk domain search or bulk domains. Click that and you can type in a whole bunch of words and a whole bunch of variations and press search all at once. That's a little ninja trick for you. If you don't know about that bulk search, you got to type them in one at a time, not available. One at a time, not available. One at a time, not available. If you do bulk, you can do one per line and search like up to 500 domain names at once. So, important that you get the .com. Get the .com. Also important that you get the other secondary. I call everything else secondary to .com. The .com is still the universal one. Even in the UK, where a lot of people use .co.uk, they still understand .com. In Australia, when you go global, if you get a client that's not from your country, .com pretty much goes everywhere. If you do a .co.uk because you live in London, well, if you get a US client, they're always gonna be like, what kind of weird website? And most people like to do business with something familiar. So you're shooting yourself in the foot if you buy one specific only to your country. If you live in Sweden, you could buy .se, and you should, but that's as a secondary backup domain. So once you get the .com and you see that's available, usually if the .com's available, all the other secondary types are available. I always get, here's the ones I always get: the net, the org, the info, the me, the .tv. Sometimes I will get the us.us. Sometimes I'll get the .mobi. Depends. But for sure, .com, that's the primary. Secondary, .net, info, org, TV, the .me, you know, somewhat important. Now, why do you want all those? Well, a few reasons. You want to get all the secondary ones primarily so no one else can get them. Okay, that's the primary reason. You don't want an accidental competitor. You don't want somebody buying those domain names and now it's confusion for your customers. So you want to reserve them. That's the primary. So a lot of times you'll never use them. Other times I will use them. Maybe if the .org, if you wanted to start a charity side with your brand name on it, you could use the .org. But for the most part, I just redirect them to the .com. And you can set that up later in more advanced settings, or you can email support on Namecheap and .com. And GoDaddy, and ask them how you can forward all your secondary domains to the .com, or you can usually leave them. You don't even have to forward them. Not many people are going to start by typing in .info. Most people are going to start by typing in .com. If you live in the UK or a country, I would add to the list of domains you probably should buy the country-specific one. So if you know you're going to do a lot of business in Sweden, you probably want the .se. If you're going to do a lot of business in UK, you probably want the .co.uk. So there are times when, but the locals are still secondary domains. Really do your best to get a .com. So you type that in, you click all those, you press proceed. It's going to take you to the checkout. They're always trying to upsell you. GoDaddy's trying to upsell you. Namecheap's going to try to upsell you. The one upsell that I like, if you can get it, it's not that much more expensive. It's the private. And Namecheap gives it. Oh, one of the things I like about Namecheap over GoDaddy is Namecheap gives you free privacy for 1 year for free. They call it Privacy Guard or something. GoDaddy, I think you have to pay $1 or $2 per domain name. So, why do you want privacy? In general, privacy is nice, to not show up publicly on a Whois website where people can figure out who the owner of the domain name is, and sometimes you get spam. It's not the end of the world if you don't get privacy. I'm just telling you what I generally do is I say yes to the privacy upsells, and then I check out. And usually for a package of domain names, you're looking at $50 to $100. Okay, to get the .com, net, org, info, us, mobi, tv, .me, .mobi. These 8, depending. And like I said, sometimes I just buy the core ones are com, net, org. Those 3 you always want. Always want. The other ones are really tertiary, 3rd tier. But I lump them all in secondary. There's no reason to make this too complicated. .com's the most important, and everything else comes below that. Local domains, other crazy, .network and all these crazy, they call them TLDs, top level domains. Really, .com is the only top level domain. If you're open at charity.org is the standard, but we're talking about how to start your own social media marketing and internet marketing agency. So do that, you press check out. Now, very important, make sure the payment goes through. Like, make sure you got an email. And I've learned this the hard way, where I thought I bought domains and I X off the page and it didn't give me that confirmation. I like to go in one step further on Namecheap or GoDaddy, click on my account, click on my domains, and make sure that those new ones show up, because there's nothing worse than getting all excited, come back 2 days later, and you're like, someone else bought them. I had that happen to me one time. So last step after you check, look for the email receipt in writing, and one step further, belt and suspenders to double check, go and click into my account. Look there in the vault of domain names they say that you have. And yeah, that's the final step. Then get excited. We'll talk later about how to set up a website if you don't have one, how to set it up for your clients, but it starts with the domain name. The domain name is the address. It's like the address of your house. You got to be able to tell people where people to go. So you start with that address, and after you have the address, then we'll start building the house and building the agency. Okay? So homework below, I want you to just basically recap what the primary and secondary domain names are. Okay? Primary and secondary, and the general rule of what to avoid when you're naming. So just write out in your own words, what to avoid. Misspellings, letters together, remember all that I talked about. If you need to rewind, go ahead and rewind. Make sure you complete this so you can get your certification, okay? Complete that, and thanks so much. I will see you on the next lesson.